Welcome to another episode of Freed from Feminism. We are so delighted to have Tasha-Rose and Travis on with us today. First of all, my name is Teresa.
And I'm Beth.
And our episode today is something we're really, really excited about and very passionate about because the very first thing that most people say when we talk to them about whether women should work, if they can work, etc., is, well, I mean, people can't live on one income nowadays. I mean, it's impossible. You're going to be eating out of a box. So we invited Travis on with his wife, Tasha-Rose, because Travis is a financial planner, and hopefully that's correct. Is that your actual title and everything?
Correct. Yes.
Awesome. So he can kind of tell us how they do it, because Tasha-Rose is stay at home, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we are so excited to hear your story and how you're doing it. And so thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're pretty excited about it. We've been thinking about it basically all week, or at least I have been.
Yeah, and I actually happened to get into an unexpected conversation with somebody just actually yesterday and today. It was weird that we connected, but he was mentioning something. I said, well, my wife stays at home and does homeschool and has a YouTube channel where she talks about that kind of stuff. And he said, wow, I can't imagine homeschooling. I don't know how people make ends meet. And it was just kind of funny that we were having this conversation today. So I'll steer him to the show when it's available.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well then we'll just go ahead and kind of just throw questions at you, because I know that we are both really excited to kind of get your knowledge about all this. So first question, is this even possible? What do you say to those people who say, how can you do that nowadays? I mean, no one can live on like $30,000 to $50,000 a year. That's crazy.
Right.
I'm glad that you picked that range because
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, right. I think that a lot of the time when it comes up, people don't really talk about it much. They don't ask about how that works or anything like that. I think most people assume that I'm probably making a lot more money than I am. And the truth is, I've never made a whole lot of money, and I wasn't always a financial planner either. I used to just work in a lab in manufacturing, and it was just a pretty typical kind of a wage. But we were able to make it work, and I think the answer is yes, it is possible. It's just a matter of what do you value. I mean, I think there was, when we first got together, there were a few months when you were still working a job that you had before we got together, but that didn't last long.
Nope.
And then we just figured out how to make it work, and it wasn't easy, but it's really about, I don't know. I mean, I think it has to do with being really frugal, and what do you value, what's important, and working into that sort of a situation. And it wasn't even like we were starting out together from scratch. You had 3 children when we got together, and so there were 3 children. All of a sudden I was going from being a single guy doing just fine on my own income to now there's a family with 3 kids. So it was a big adjustment. So it's definitely something that we found possible. I haven't actually made significant changes in the amount of money that I work, but I've been able to change how I utilize my time with gaining additional skill and flexibility. So I've got more time that I get to spend at home. So I actually, instead of throwing myself further into trying to earn more and more, I've used that time to help supplement and really invest in the family. And that's really where our values are.
Right.
Is what are we investing in, and what's our mission, really, is the whole question. And that's been, I think, a very long sort of a development. is reevaluating that as we continue to grow as a couple and a family, is, what is really important. Because it's easy to get stuck in that trap of like, okay, well, I went to school, I got a degree, I got a job, and now I'm trying to make money, and the whole point of that is just to try and get to a place where I'm making more money and more money and more money, so that I can save money and save money and save money. For what point? And that's really where I was, and had to grow through. And so I guess that sort of opens up, a whole lot of other things as far as evaluating what's important morally and philosophically, faith-wise, and how does that grow over time too? Because that's been a growth for me as well, and for us as a family over the years, is just what's important and what are we growing towards.
So you mentioned that you have more time yourself. Are there any other benefits that you see in having one income versus two incomes?
I think it makes us a lot more mindful of how we spend our money also. So we don't just, go and impulse buy, and we take our time with making purchase decisions and say no to our children a lot. And, we're just a lot more aware. And I think that we talk a lot more about money too. Like a lot, one of the biggest causes of divorce is because of money, and it's because there isn't conversation about it. And so we talk about money, I don't know, like probably a good chunk of, a little bit every day. We talk about some facet of our finance. We don't have like, I think it's like Dave Ramsey or something. He suggests having family meetings about your budget and stuff. We don't do that. We just we talk about stuff. If the children ask, well, what does this cost? We tell them. Like we don't hide money issues from the children. If we can't afford something, they know it. And, but they've always got what they need. It's a matter of needs and wants, that distinguishment. But I think that we talk about it more. So that's a pretty good benefit, I would say, just generally, but also just for our family dynamic, and nobody's going to be walking on eggshells around money issues at all.
Yeah,
I like that.
It's a really big point. I mean, I've talked to hundreds of people about, their financial, circumstances and things like that. And that was actually a little bit of the way that I got into financial planning. I was curious. I was talking to people about, how they, manage their own financial life. And that's what got me switching gears into going into financial planning. But having had a chance to talk to so many people, that's one thing that I find all the time, is that there's not a lot of people talking about their financial experience, not a lot of family conversations. People don't have a lot of insight from their parents when they're growing up. So then that sets them up to not have a very strong foundation. Now, some of that's starting to change nowadays. And the younger generation is generally a lot more clued in than, what might have been the case decades ago, a generation or two ago, as far as things that are important to be thinking about when you're young and early on. But there's still a lot of situations out there where you don't see that kind of thing. And I didn't have a whole lot of that kind of conversation from my parents either. So it was something that I think there was a little bit of it, but not much. But it was something I definitely was lucky to be able to come into and have that awareness.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of positive financial coaching from my parents either. I grew up pretty poor, and parents who were they spent money faster than they could take it in. And one thing I wanted to say was that I think a benefit also, speaking to the way parents relate to their children about money, is, if the children do want something, we encourage entrepreneurship, so that, it's a really good benefit for a child to think outside of the box. Like, we don't give our children an allowance. If they want money for themselves, they have to figure out a way to make that money external of our household, because we're not paying them for things that get done around here. That's the cost of being part of a family. Many hands make light work, and so if they want to make money, our son bought himself a snowblower after a season of working for the money to buy himself a snowblower so that he can make more money you know, he was shoveling. So he's kind of like, he's upgraded, you know, and he's saved on, he bought himself a DS, and our eldest saved, I don't even know how much money she saved before she left for school, just doing babysitting and doing odd jobs, and, you know, even getting out employment at different places. So it's just a matter of encouraging your children that they are capable, you know, and that sets them apart from a lot of other people, and that will carry with them when they're adults too.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We may have to come back to how this affects children. But going back to the two income thing, so we're in kind of, it seems like a, you know, anti-feminist Catholic bubble here. Let's speak to people maybe just a little bit beyond that periphery of looking in. Um, Most of them will have two income. You know, we're all three of our, you know, Beth is a stay-at-home mom. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and obviously you are as well. Speak to those moms who don't necessarily have the luxury or the interest in doing that, about the disadvantages of a two-income family, regardless of how much you make, let's say.
Right. Absolutely. So this is actually kind of my wheelhouse. Coming out of feminism, I have a lot of friends who are kind of on that cusp of, well, I still kind of believe some of this feminist stuff, but also I really like my kids and I really like being at home with them, and I want to be more part of their lives. And I think all of this world shakeup is kind of rattling a lot more women into that. Like, holy cow, I am losing so much time with my children, you know? So I'm going to harken back to what Travis said about what your priorities are. Are your priorities shipping your children off and farming them out to somebody else's care all day long to teach them God knows what, you know? And I know a lot of left-leaning people who are like, whoa, what the heck is happening in the schools, you know? Who are starting to kind of take a little bit more active interest in what's going on with their kids. So it's what your priorities are. Do you want to ship your kids off, or do you want to see your baby's first steps? It's hard to drop your kid off at daycare because they're not supposed to. You know, there's that maternal biological connection to your children for a very long time that I don't think a lot of people really understand. That mother baby dyad bond that we have with our children for, I mean, into their preschool and elementary school years. That's why it hurts, and that's why they don't want to leave, and why you don't want to leave them, because you're not supposed to. And that's just biologically speaking, you know. So I think that a lot of women who are on that cusp are looking, and they're like, okay, well, how do I do this? Well, how you do it is this. This is just my opinion, not the financial planner's opinion. My opinion is that you have to just do it. You have to set what your goals are and your boundaries are. Talk to your husband about it and say, look, this is getting really challenging for me to be away from our children. If you can maybe even step into it slowly, like just downgrade to a part-time job, or downgrade to a gig economy type of job, like a DoorDash delivery or something like that, just so you feel so you can kind of, it's like a slow rip off of the Band-Aid, you know what I mean? Because so many women are made to feel like that's the only way that we can be contributory to society, is by earning a paycheck, when society is clearly suffering because women haven't been in their homes, and women haven't been raising their children, and families have been falling apart, and, you know, everything's gone to hell in a handbasket as a result of that. And we need to be encouraging women that, yes, this is the greatest thing you can do for society. This is the greatest contribution you can make, is to be a wife and a mother, because it all comes down to that.
So much truth to what you said there.
Indeed. Indeed.
I mean, that's kind of, it's just a slow rip off. And and I think being honest with women too, like, that's really important. And then if you've got good tips to share with other women when they ask, okay, well, how do you do that? And how do you not rip your hair out? And how do you, like, sister, sometimes I do rip my hair out. And sometimes I do scream at my children when I shouldn't. And, I don't, it's not Pinterest perfect. It's not Instagram perfect,
Exactly.
and you just have to be real and be honest and say, it's not going to be easy. Motherhood is not easy. You went through labor and birth. Come on. Like, that's sets you up to understand that this is not going to, so just be real and be frank and be honest and share and help one another without trying to put women down, because we're all at a different spot. I 100% believe that all mothers should be in their homes. And the only time I'm going to be kind of rude about it is when you're just kind of like gloss over and go, well, that's not true for every woman. Because I disagree 100%. And if you just want to ignore it, that's on you. And I'm just not here to help you. I'm here to help the people who want to do this and be there for their children and cook their kids food and take them to the state park for the day or whatever they're going to do, I don't know if that answered your question.
Well,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like, a couple of incomes and, and working two jobs, in the household. And, one of the big drawbacks is just how do you then find time to be a family ever? And I don't understand how that works. Like, I'm gone, or unavailable enough of the time that it's not, ideal, but that's necessary. But if we were both working, and I see so many families where maybe they do like a opposite shift kind of a thing. When does the husband and wife ever have a chance to be together?
Right.
It's just I can't imagine living that kind of life.
No, not
Can
at
you
all.
speak to maybe a little bit of the client, obviously without getting into any details or anything, but like your clientele who do have two income families, do you see a stress level there? Do you see even just a financial drain there with regards to the cost for babysitting, the cost for, go ahead.
Well, yeah, it really is. You do the math on it, and it's like, well, what are you really working for at that point? And then the other question is, okay, well, what are the values? Really, like, okay, what do you want to be, doing with your money? And I look at all that stuff, and I think, okay, well, all of this, money that's going in is going out some way to certain other expenses, and it's just how do the economics work on a broad scale? Yeah, just it's a large transfer of different funds in different ways. But yeah, you talk about you've got to pay for daycare. Some people are able to find really good deals and that kind of thing, or work out grandparents and stuff like that, and that can be really nice. But really at the end of the day, what are you doing with that money and with that income? What's the point? What are you doing in that manner? And if that's all you're doing is just making money to make money and to spend it, then that's not really the point. That's not really what we're supposed to be here for, and that really lends to a big disconnect between what our real natures are. We were made for natural purpose of rearing children, continuing the population. We also have our faith tells us that we have a desire, and we're made for God, to be with God, and so we spend time doing that too, and that's really, really important. But when it comes to the families, the numbers, they don't really work out really well, and this is something that I'm working on, shifting the way that I do work and doing a lot more consulting with folks that are and helping people figure out how to do this in a better way. So right now the model isn't there, and it's something that I'm still growing what I'm doing, and I do a few different things as well with my professional financial planning and other consulting that I do. So I'm not as focused on that, but really building that up, building up resources, and how to really get this figured out is down the road, and that's something that I think is really important, is just understanding that working just to work and just to get by is not great. And I think one of the other big disadvantages to that idea that, oh, well, we both have to work to make the money to make the ends meet, is that then nobody's stretched to push themselves at all. I mean, if she had an income coming in, I wouldn't have needed to develop a different professional avenues of my work over the years to be able to be more versatile in what I do and what I can do. But I have never come to a point in my life where I've ever thought, I, I don't have any options for what I can do to support my family. Just the opposite. I continue to have more and more possible options for how I can support my family. And I mean, if worse comes to worse, I mean, there's always something to do because, especially over the last decade, the economy's been just incredibly growing. And there's a lot of things out there. The average income, even, for simple work, you can start out making $20 an hour somewhere. That's not completely unreasonable to be able to at least make things keep going. And so it's really pushed me, right, to grow. But if we were both making an income, we had a little bit extra here and there, then there wouldn't be that drive in any way, and there's not that growth. And at the same time, our children would definitely be suffering for it in our strongest opinion, basically. But it's just not a beneficial situation. Children and parents in the home.
Right. It's something I didn't even think of on how it affects the husband and father of the family, because we're always talking, oh, the mom can stay at home, but it really does push harder. I really like that. One of the other excuses I've heard from people about needing the two incomes is that one income, they're afraid, well, what if, they lose their job or something? And you only have that one income coming in, or there's too many restrictions that you would have to do to your budget. Is that true? Is there anything that you need to be wary of? Do you need to save more? Things that your money should or shouldn't be going into that you wouldn't have to do with a two-income family?
Well, yeah, definitely. So when we talk about, I mean, one of the most fundamental things in financial planning is you want to talk about having some emergency savings in case anything unexpected happens. And there's a pretty set formula that if you're just somebody single, 3 months is plenty. And you start with trying to work up to 1 month and 2 and then 3. And if eventually you can get to 6 months, that's great. Well, when you're talking about family, if you've got 2 income earners in the household, that 3 month number is still good because you've got potentially that other income to fall back on. And then the same thing, if you can work out to 6 months, that's good too, as far as the immediate emergency savings. And then, other more medium and long-term savings is a good idea too. And you want to be saving into those different buckets for different reasons, whether it's, I want to save up for such and such a trip or such and such a purchase after 5 years, 10 years, and then there's the long-term retirement savings and that kind of thing. So those are the different buckets, but emergency savings, if you've only got one income, the minimum becomes you want to have not less than 6 months, probably work towards 9 months is a pretty strong goal, and even have a year worth of emergency savings if you're on one income. And that's really where those numbers are different. So it is a different reality, and you do have to be worried about that. But at the same time, yeah, it is that, and I suppose when I kind of reflect on this, in different ways, like having a family is a risky endeavor and kind of a high pressure sort of a thing to get into, right? It's not just like it's not for the faint of heart. And I mean, there's a lot to say about that, but then you go to the step where I'm going to be solely responsible for the financial well-being of this entire family, and everything that supports us and keeps us going and everything. And yeah, I guess that's a lot of pressure to have. I mean, I don't think twice about it anymore, but that's part of growth, right? But it is a big undertaking, and you have to be willing to do it, and recognize that you are doing that, and that's a very important thing for men to do. Yes, I am responsible for my family, And yeah, I've got the income that's coming in to take care of them. If anything happens to that, I need to be ready to figure out, what to do. And, that being said, there are a lot of different ways that you can access things. And, we own our house, so we have some equity in the house, and that's an asset. We have other assets, we've got savings, we have different things that we can do, or things that we can cut out. When I think about things that we could potentially cut out, there's really not a whole lot because we already do all that. Anything that's practical, we keep really as low as we can with any of our expenses. So I guess that's pretty minimal already. And I feel really good about that because that just means that we're being really effective and efficient with the resources that we have.
Right.
And I think that's important, regardless. Like if we can reasonably cut it out, then why not do it? If you don't need it, then you can probably be okay with doing without it.
And I think a lot of people have a lot. Like if they think about all of the things that they've got, they probably have about 25 other things that they're not thinking about that they also don't need. Like, there's just so many things that people have that they don't need, but we've been inculcated to believe that we have to have a brand new car and make a car payment every month. And we have to go to college and we have to, have Netflix and you have to have this subscription and got to get there's this new Catholic subscription box, get that too. And that, support your Catholic merchants and stuff. But if you don't need it or you can't afford it, stop buying it. Like that's, you don't have to go get a coffee. I bought a coffee today because I needed more coffee and I left the house with not enough coffee today.
When's the last time?
But the last time I bought a coffee, I don't even remember when the last time I bought a coffee, maybe on our trip. Like, that's it. I don't even remember the last time I bought a coffee because we make our coffee at home and I like making our coffee at home. We have a ritual of making coffee at home and he makes the coffee every morning and it's like, I love it. I love that. But cutting out all these things, like people just really don't examine their lives enough. Like, I think if people went through their lives of all the things they need versus what they want and do it kind of like an examination of conscience, they would probably really realize that maybe we should all be minimalists.
Tiny house.
Right.
Yeah.
I honestly have just started to look a little bit more because I just made the transition to being a stay-at-home mom, and you guys mentioned at the beginning about how you really do look at your finances even more. Like, I was already looking at mine, but I wasn't really looking at mine. So now I'm like nitpicky about every grocery purchase because I'm like, we don't need that. We can do this. This is a little bit cheaper, and there's that, and we need to use this because I spent money on it. But you don't get that when you have this comfort of like, oh, we have enough. Oh, we're not even looking at our budget, like, oh, I can buy that coffee out, it's no problem until you're like, wait a second, like, you don't really need this. And then you start saying like, oh my goodness, I bought coffee out 30 times, almost every time, like every day this month,
Like,
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, and then I like to think about, well, how many hours worth of work was that, money that you spent?
You never
right?
asked that question, Travis. You never asked that question. It's too painful.
Well, time away from your family. Like, how many hours away from your family did you just spend on that thing? Like, was that worth it? And that's really what it is. And that's the frugality of the resource. And we talk about resources, and finances are a resource, but they're really a tool. They're a means to the end. What is the end? Well, for us, it's the family, and what are we doing to raise our family in the best way that we can? And then really the most important resource is the time, the time that you're spending doing it. And are you making good use of your time and what you can? I mean, that's not to say that I don't waste time plenty of the time, but I at least try to be mindful, of it a lot more often and examine.
Right. I was just going to say, it's like that's part, at least the examination of conscience that I use. It's like wasting time is part of the examination of conscience. Well, what else are you wasting as a result when you are spending money frivolously?
Right.
One of the other things that I personally have been wondering about is retirement. Do you save up like twice the amount because there's two of you and one of you isn't working? Or do you just, like you said, your priorities? Do you aggressively invest as much as possible when you're young? What would you say on retirement?
Well, yeah, no, that's a good point. So when it comes to retirement, I mean, if you're living a reasonable lifestyle on one income, then saving for retirement according to that one income by the rule is still going to work, assuming that you're living a similar lifestyle. And for most people, I mean, there's a lot of mysticism around that, but you're never going to go wrong saving too much for retirement. So that's a truth, especially early on, because the earlier you save and the more you save early, the more it's going to grow over time. So as a single guy, I was always very aggressive about how I was saving, and I was also fairly aggressive about how I was investing. That's a personal choice. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. Everybody's got their own tolerance level. But it is, true that generally when you're younger, you can afford to be more aggressive because you've got more time, so you can weather the short-term ups and downs to have the long-term growth. Um, but um, but really, it just comes down to the evaluation, and that's where the financial planning comes in. Is, well, how much are you going to need to live the kind of retirement lifestyle that you want? What's the housing number going to look like? What's the medical number going to look like? What's the other payments and things that you need to make going to look like? How does all that fit together? And then figuring out what you need to live on that kind of an income that you'll need in retirement. So yeah, there are numbers that can be run to figure out how those fit. But at the same time, I used to be a lot more worried about that than I am nowadays because of some of those philosophical changes and really conversions that I've gone through in my growth, where it's not really all about money. And so, if I don't have, millions of dollars in retirement, I'm not worried about that number right now, because I'm worried about right now focusing on making sure I've got the best life planned and for my family that I can provide. And that's what's important. Um, Down the road, I will have what I need. And I know that because at this point, I haven't been faced with a situation where I'm not able to provide for my family and provide for the income that we need. And it's the kind of situation that I don't expect that it's going to be unavailable later on. I mean, there are adaptations that can be made.
And it's not necessarily retirement, but it is a provision that he's made also, is making sure that we've got the necessary insurances in place should something happen, and I think
Right.
that's something that a lot of couples don't have, that they need to have. There needs to be insurance on both of us. Because if something were to happen to me, that I was hurt really bad, or I met my demise, like, things still need to be paid for and run around this household. And how does that happen? He's likely got to pay somebody to do it so he can continue to work to provide for our children.
Yeah.
Or if he met his end, how am I gonna? We got to pay for the house.
Right.
We have to live, so we have insurance. And that's an investment that a lot of people overlook because they're not getting an immediate return on it. So they don't think about it,
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the idea of having life insurance is, in some cases, and in some ways, even more important than the idea of saving for the eventuality of not having to work anymore. But really, when it comes to the thought about retirement, personally, this is something that I'm still really developing. As far as where does it really sit? But I don't know when that is maybe going to happen. I mean, I used to have goals that maybe I could retire pretty young, but honestly, um, I think that with what I can offer and what I have to do, the talents that God has given me, I'm supposed to use them, right? I'm not supposed to just be idle. And yes, having the flexibility of having enough money that I don't have to worry about earning income to live and get by, so that then I can do other things that maybe enrich other people with what I can do is good. But I can intersperse that along the way too. But the big thing is that as time goes by, we won't necessarily have as much expenses that we need to be able to cover. And so that's something that can be looked at too. And so being able to work still a little bit, but not necessarily earning as much income later on, is still going to be able to help meet the needs. So saving a little bit now, but not being overly concerned about that immediately is in our case the right formula right now.
And you have 7 kids, so
Right,
that's
right, exactly.
7 houses that you can stay in.
Yeah, someday. Which is something. And I mean, it's not something that we would necessarily ever tell our kids that they need to be figuring out how they're going to take care of us or anything.
Right.
And it's reasonable that we would be able to make certain provisions for ourselves too. But certainly, yeah, it's not going to be hard to figure things out. We're resourceful.
Yeah.
Okay, well then let's get practical. So we have actually a kind of a younger audience, um, early 20s, maybe, going up to mid 30s, of course. But I've personally noticed that a lot of the women who listen to us are fairly young. And so, Tasha-Rose, maybe you can answer this about what have you learned along the way of how you can be a frugal housewife, as a housewife? But then what would you say to someone who is single or who just got engaged? How do they prepare themselves to go into a marriage where they're going to need to kind of buckle down or even just be mindful of their finances?
Yeah, I think that's a really big question. Well, first I would say to jump back to the college question, I did go to college. I had a lot of it paid for by my grandfather, and I got a lot of merit scholarships. I had very little student debt, like maybe $5,000, and I paid it off like, within 2 years of graduating college. And so I didn't have to worry about that. We didn't have to worry about that. He didn't have to take that debt on, as my husband. But if you don't have a way to pay for college and you have a plan to be a wife and a mother, and you don't need to have a 4-year degree to be a wife and a mother, the last time I checked, don't put that burden onto yourself. Just don't do it. There's no reason to, because you can take a philosophy course online if you want to. You can take all sorts of, Socratic thinking. You can take, extra math classes if you plan to homeschool your children. And sorry, that's another alarm there. If you plan to homeschool your children and you don't feel like you've got good math skills, you can take a math class. You can go to a community college and just pay cash for a course. Like, it's not that difficult to get a sound education, especially in this day and age of the internet. Like, come on, just don't put that burden onto yourself and your husband. It's not reasonable. If I had to go back and not spend money, I wouldn't. If I knew today, I didn't even have that much money to have to deal with, I wouldn't do it, because I'm not using my degree, and B, everything I did and learned was all based on interest. And if I was interested in it then and had the resource of the internet like I do now, I still could have learned everything I learned to apply in how I think, how I learn, how I behave in the world,
Mm-hmm.
So that's my first one. Don't go to college if you don't need to. If you're planning to stay home, just don't do it. If it's personal enrichment, then talk to whoever, talk to your spouse, talk to your fiance, talk to your spiritual director. Is this a reasonable decision? If it's just for my personal development, because your personal development can happen without taking on burden. Another thing, so practically aside from that, I think that a lot of women need to learn, I hate the words like home ec, but that's kind of what we really need to go back to, is like learning about home economy, because home economy is a lot more than just knowing how to bake something or knowing what the washer settings are. There's way more than that goes on. And that's something that that's a big focus for our family, is our home economy and how our home can use the financial tools that we have to generate resources. That's how I kind of look at it. So like learn how to can food, learn how to do food preservation. Like there are all sorts of women who can teach other women how to do these kinds of things. Learn how to make clothing. And you might not even necessarily need it, you know, but you might need to know how to tailor a skirt that you bought at the thrift store, you know, to fit your body better. You might need to learn how to, he wears suspenders, he wears the button kind of suspenders on his pants. Like you might need to know how to sew a button on your husband's pants. You know, it's just some simple, stupid stuff like that. But it's simple, stupid stuff that matters. And then it's like home processes and like how to clean rooms and how to encourage your children how to clean and how to get them engaged. Like all of that is part of home economy. So finding women mentors in your life who are already really solid, and I'm not like my house is a disaster right now. I'm telling you that. Totally honest with you. Not do anything. We do a big food distribution thing on Thursdays, and so everything goes to pot on Thursdays, and we didn't do any of our regular cleaning up yesterday afterward, because then we went on a big field trip today up to a state park. So everything kind of went haywire, but it'll get cleaned up tomorrow. But find somebody who's at least is going to be honest with you and tell you that her house is not always clean. He knows how to clean things really well and knows how to manage a household. Having a mentor is really important. I didn't have a mentor. My mother was a horrible housekeeper. Everything was dirty. She was a hoarder. She hoarded animals. Like it was, ugh. So I've got my certain things that I'm like, okay, this really needs to be clean basically all the time, you know, or it's going to make me just lose my mind. But it's just a process. I mean, I have an 18-year-old daughter who, you know, up until the day that she left for college, still would not clean the dishes properly, you know? So it's like, it takes a lot. It really does take a lot to teach children how to do things. And they still, even with a mother who's attentive like that, they're still not necessarily going to have it solid when they launch, but at least they've got the basis for it, you know? And a lot of us did not have that kind of mentor. So we need to find those women, you know, the old woman in your church or the mother in your church with 10 children who's like solid on it, you
I
know?
mean, you know, in all honesty, you know, I would say that even though they're not necessarily mentors, you've networked and connected with a lot of women through social media,
Sure.
online, and
Yeah.
you've gotten, you know, little bits of, you know, wisdom
Mhm.
from things that other people do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a, I guess in this day and age, that's maybe a more typical, you
Mhm.
know, way that can happen. But certainly if you can find, you know, a dedicated support and connection, that's great too. But
There was
all sorts of wisdom out there to find.
there's a confraternity that I joined. It's the Confraternity of Catholic Homeschool Mothers. And the woman who started it, Katie, she's not really running it anymore necessarily. You can still join it, but there aren't like she's not facilitating new chapters and whatnot. But she has a manual that she used to send out to people that was like, here are all the things that women do when they take care of their homes. And it's like, it's an exhaustive list of things that women need to know how to do. And one of the components of setting up this chapter of homeschool mothers is it's rejecting feminism and it's being at home with your children and it's learning the domestic arts again. And it's brilliant and beautiful. And I would really love to see something like that facilitated a little bit more. You know, when you've got your homeschool co-op, like, is there a time that moms can break out and have a mom class and a wife class and have it open to women who are discerning marriage, you know? These are the things that you do, and this is how you comport yourself, and this is how you know, just I mean, it's everything from fly lady, put your shoes on in the morning to shine your sink and then whatever other systems, Jordan Page's systems or whoever else, like all of these different systems that women have, there's so much wisdom out there. You just have to find who the people that you resonate with to garner all of that. We really need to return to home economy in a productive sense rather than I know how to make a souffle, you know.
And that makes me think of back to the life insurance question. So there's like a whole list of all these things that women, mothers, do in the home, and what it takes to run a home and facilitate that. And that's where the idea of life insurance for even a stay-at-home mother who's not earning an income in the household really makes a lot of sense. And if you look at the numbers, if you add up all the different job descriptions that a mother's going to have in the home, they're definitely easily on paper bringing a six-figure income's worth of work into the home,
Right.
which actually my income would pale in comparison to what she should get paid for all of the work that she does on a regular basis. But that's what that's home economy. That's what it takes is that. But it's using the time to fill in those things rather than having to outsource and pay those many thousands of dollars to have those things taken care of.
I have 2 points to that. One point is that's something that feminists will use a lot to say, oh, well, see, women who stay home, they should get paid by the government to stay home because all of this wealth that they should be earning because they stay home. Well, she's also getting paid. Like my husband pays for my house.
Right.
He literally bought me a house. You know, like he pays for my vehicle.
She did pick it. I mean,
I did pick it. I picked our home. I was like, this is it. This is our home.
It's such a utilitarian mentality of
Yes.
a person equals a dollar amount. It's rubbish.
Yeah. And so the second point speaks to that too. It's not falling into the trap. Again, if you're home and you and your husband are on the same page, okay, you're going to be home, not falling into the trap that you still have to be generating an income. So like lots of women, that's where a lot of women fall into the MLM traps, and they're like, buy my Scentsy and buy my LuLaRoe, buy my like all these million different MLMs.
What's an MLM?
Marketing schemes. So like your Tupperware party kind of gone haywire. A lot of women fall for these because they specifically target women who are at home in this mindset of women are only productive if they're generating an income. And so they end up wasting their husband's money that he's earned for their family by, buying into these huge things. And I'm a girl boss now. Well, no, you're not. You just wasted a whole bunch of money and you have nothing to show for it, except for maybe you got skinnier. Like that's, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why more women specifically don't catch on to that it's not good for your home economy to be trying to bring that in. And now sometimes I make some affiliate dollars now and then. I make maybe a couple $100 a month on some affiliates that I've got, but that money I just pour into our homeschool, and there's never any expectation from him that I am generating income. And so when I do have those couple $100, like I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna thrift shop and make our home homier, or I'm going to, which actually I'm kind of going in reverse of that now, minimalizing.
Get rid of some of this.
I'm getting rid of stuff now. I'm just like, okay, I'm over having things, but like putting it into our homeschool though, and putting it into homeschool experiences and the art tools that we like to use, and buying the high quality things that I want to have for our homeschool with this extra money that I just happen to bring in because I promote things that we actually use in our home. You know what I mean? So those are my 2 points that I had to that.
Yeah. And then one other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about home economy and the things that you do to sort of generate some financial resource or value out of what we already have and make it useful. I think of too, the potential waste that we would have if I didn't know how to figure out how to put a washing machine timer into the washing machine, which is just removing a couple of screws and buying a $35 part and it's done. And yeah, we didn't have a washing machine for a week. It could have been a lot worse, or we could have spent, the $300 to have somebody come out and put that $35 part in. But it really only took an hour and a half plus the time it took me to shop online to get it sent out. Or the dryer belt, or there was one time I had to replace in the middle of winter in Minnesota, I had to replace the furnace blower because it wasn't blowing the heat through the house.
It's like in the polar vortex, our heater went out.
My dad had luckily had some experience with that, but I mean, you can look this stuff up on YouTube and figure it out, and you just have to not be afraid to make stuff like that happen. doing, fixes on the cars. We use old cars. We don't buy new cars. And I figure out how to, keep them going. If I need to replace an alternator, I'll do that, or whatever else. And I mean, you can really figure out a lot of things these days. And, I ask, the professionals from time to time. I've got some good connections that I've made, and I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty, and take some time doing that stuff. And I know I'm not, the only guy like that, but I think there are, a lot of people that don't take the time to figure that out. And they just pour their time and their energy into just solely focusing on the work that they do for a living. But I think that's a really big missed opportunity, because then the children don't get to see that kind of thing actually being done and figured out. And that's a huge value. And so when I think about, who do I want to be as a father, and how do I want to be showing my sons what it means to grow up and be a man, and, how to do things. I want them to know that, no, you can figure out how to do all sorts of things, and don't be afraid to.
Right. And because the point of marriage is building, right? So you're building, we're building wealth together, but we're building wealth in more ways than dollar signs. We're building wealth in how our children are raised. We're building wealth in the experiences that we have that teach us how to do things. So, when you take an inventory of what your assets are, I think a lot of people fail to, again, it's an examination, a lot of people fail to examine, okay, what skills do I have? Like, what practical hands-on skills do I have? And what skills would I like to have? And what skills do I have but could be better? So I think that all plays into the wealth that a man or a woman has in coming into a marriage and family making.
I love that. I think there was a post on Twitter the other day about the home economic stuff. Like, we need a college for that, for women. And what I would give for my 4.5 years of engineering school, which are worthless to me, to learn how to can food, because I don't know how to do that.
Someone needs to start a Catholic finishing school, because
that's what I was going to say.
it would be so popular, and I would go there as a married woman. So
Used to be way back when it was that Wellesley was make women into wives college,
Yes.
That's what they used to do. And then, women's movements had to happen and ruin it all.
Well, don't you know how much they've helped women? We were oppressed before. We couldn't do anything.
And now we're buying into our own oppression. I have a theory, just a quick aside. You can use this however you want to, or not at all. I have a theory that feminism has never actually happened. All that's really happened is women imitating every single bad thing about men. The gruffness and or turning even like positive masculine traits into something really negative because it's not natural for them. So it's not really actually a women's movement that has happened. It's just a women imitating men movement.
Well, you've been reading G.K. Chesterton, because he says feminism is the triumph of masculinism.
Oh, wow.
And I agree with that. That you and he are like spirit animals or something.
I do love the man.
Yeah, you're totally right.
No, it's it is kind of crazy, and I don't know when I think about all of that, and like what is, I mean, this is maybe a little bit bare too, but like what is potentially the attraction to a woman that is out there and working and earning an income and working in the world and doing all of that stuff in an outward sense, for a man when it comes to thinking about having a family, and how is that woman being viewed? In what way is that woman being valued, and for what abilities is that woman being valued? And I mean, I think really, to me, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I suppose I haven't thought about this necessarily this much, but really what that almost amounts to is a bit of laziness. Like, oh, well, great, if I can be with this woman who's already productive and resourceful and already got a lot of stuff figured out, then I don't have to be as much so, because they're going to be able to earn an income, so I
Right.
don't have to make as much money, or whatever it is.
Right.
And so it's just kind of the reverse of what I said before. Like, that is one of the potential disadvantages, is if I hadn't had responsibility to take care of my family, then I wouldn't take responsibility to take care of my family, right? You have to be pushed to the level. And I mean, that's just human 101. Like, you only rise to the level of discomfort that you're forced to.
Right.
Otherwise, you don't.
Right. And that's actually kind of a counter argument to, a lot of feminism saying, well, wages are so stagnated and so low, so how can anybody have a single income? Well, if women weren't in the workforce, wages would go up for their husbands. Like, this is a no-brainer, Companies would have more money if they didn't have to pay maternity leave, and if they didn't have to pay all of these things that women are requiring of employers. If they only had to pay a few weeks of paternity leave for a new dad to be home with his wife and help establish the new family dynamic, like, that's great, that's awesome. They don't have to pay for it twice now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then the other economics of it too at the same time, right? So if two people are working in the workforce and they're earning enough income to make ends meet as a family, then neither one of them are going to be complaining, at least not loudly enough, about how they have to make more money to support their family. So then the companies get away with paying everybody less money, right, for the same type of work, and so you have sort of that lowering of the level rather than a rising.
I wish they'd
the
teach
level.
this in like economics classes. Go figure.
Yeah. That would be interesting.
Well, this has been great. We are really happy to have you guys on. I learned a lot. I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to go look at my finances and review my priorities on where we spend money. So are there any final thoughts you guys have, or any ways that people can connect with you? If you want people to connect with you, or if you just want them to watch this video and that be it.
Yeah, I mean, they can connect with me. Well, both of us are on Twitter. I'm what is my Twitter? Tasha-Rose Rad Ma'am. I think I am on Twitter because they wouldn't take mama. Too many letters. But you'll find me on Twitter, and then I have got a YouTube channel of the same name, Radical Mothering. And then we have a website too, radicalmothering.com, radical-mothering.com.
Oh yeah, you've got a couple years before radicalmothering.com.
Yeah, radicalmothering.com is bought.
Yeah, and then I'm my name is Travis Apollo, so I have a financial planning business at Apollo Works Financial Planning. So it's apolloworksfinancial.com, and I'm on Twitter also at ApolloWorksFP, and I think that's
we'll link to all this in the description so they can access your websites and such.
Great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And see, did we miss anything in the about us section then?
I don't think so.
Pretty good.
That's it.
Yeah, I think so. Well, Beth, do you have any other questions, or?
No, I'm just very thankful we had them on. I really personally enjoy the practical interviews. I feel like this has been great. And we got all really in depth about, like you said, really women if we all just didn't work, it would be nice. But we really are working because we're, at home.
About our Catholicism, I mean, the Council of Trent has never been abrogated. And I'm just going to leave it at that, because I know that's the big argument. Catholic Twitter goes on fire about it every 3 months or so, but it hasn't. And it's very clear in the Catechism of the Council of Trent that women should be at home, and we are required to find contentment and joy being at home. Like, that is a requirement in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Period.
You said it. Makes so much sense, but it's so hard to explain. So.
Well, and we have to find a way to, like you said, we have to find a way to enjoy it. And when we've been indoctrinated to hate our own natures, we're fighting an uphill battle. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
we're really happy to meet you guys and meet fellow compatriots in this whole endeavor.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us on. And yeah, it
Yeah,
is a
thank you.
crazy world out there. So yeah, we need more of these kind of conversations. So thanks for letting us talk to you about it.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I guess that's it from us. Thank you again so much to Tasha-Rose and Travis Apollo for being on our show today. And again, everyone will link to all of their websites and Twitter handles in the description and give their stuff a look-see. All right. We will see you next time. Thanks.